Hello, good morning. It's just coming up to 6 a.m. on Tuesday the 7th of January. I'm just starting out on my January 200km DIY Audax. This is the 9th consecutive month I've ridden a 200km ride. So it'll mean if I get round successfully today, I'll be 3/4 of the way through my Randonneur Round the Year series. That's riding a 200km and above ride every month for 12 months. So 3/4 of the way at the end of this ride. I've opted for today because there appears to be a gap in between some extreme weather. We've had a lot of rain and we've had a lot of cold weather, including a dusting of snow. The BBC weather forecast app says 2 degrees at the moment, but it feels like -2. I was a bit concerned about ice. There is actually an ice warning until 10 a.m. this morning. We've just had about half an hour of rain and it appears to be turning any frost on the car windscreens into slush. I think the challenge for today may well be wet roads, but clearly for the first couple of hours until about 8:15 a.m. sunrise, when it starts to get light, I'll be very cautious. I will not be filming on the road between now and then. I may stop a couple of times and give you some updates, but I just don't consider it safe to ride my bike one hand on the handlebars filming. Talking about bikes, I'm on my red Audax bike. Yesterday I let out some air in the tyres and I'm running them at 15 psi less than I normally would on a summer ride, so a little bit more spongy. Obviously not going to ride as fast, but I don't want to, do I? Why would I want to? And just I've got that feeling of a little bit more security because the tyre's going to be more spongy. Today's ride is pretty much around the outskirts of Bristol, then heading due north up to Upton-on-Severn. That'll be our turn point. That could well be some wet roads around that area. Upton, Tewkesbury, Gloucester area is prone to flooding, and then I'll be heading back south. Hopefully it's mostly flat. There's only one monster hill near the end, and hopefully be mid-afternoon in good visibility. Anyway, time to head on. My priority today is just getting round, but I just thought I'd film a January Audax because I don't think they're going to get much harder than this, really, are they? After I spoke to you last, I did a long section on the Bath to Bristol bicycle track, traffic free, so it would not have been treated with grit. So I was very cautious on that. Most of it, I have to say, was okay. There were some long stretches of what looked like had been ice overnight, but was now just slush. I've now just passed under the M4. You can see all the rush hour traffic heading up towards London that way. Don't know if you can see my finger. And you can also see we're not far away from sunrise. The sky is more blue than black now. But I'm on a road which I've fallen off on before, so there's a lesson to be learned there. It was when I was doing my Randonneur Round the Year series. That was a series of 200, 300, 400 and 600 every month for a year. So I had to ride in icy conditions during that. And I remember then I came off the bike track thinking, great, I'm on tarmac, I'm on probably a treated road, and I came off along here. I don't think I broke my finger, but I possibly fractured it or injured it enough to be sore for about 6 months. So even though I'm back on what I think is a treated road, I'm still being very cautious. I thought what I'd do today is, rather than try and speak to you on the road, I'd just talk to you every time I stop, at least until it's safe anyway. And today's going to be much more of a mental game than a physical game. Anyway, for now, gonna head up here and get on some main roads, and I need to claw back some time because I've obviously been riding quite slow. But as I said, another hour possibly and it's going to be light. I'll be able to see what the road conditions are like much more, but at the moment it's more like slush rather than ice. As I suspected, I thought flooding would be an issue today, and as you can see it is. There's a bit of the road here that's badly flooded. Cars run to wait and take it one lane at a time. The good news for me is, I don't know if it's clear, there's a footpath here. I can avoid the worst of it. So problem solved easily. Anyway, let's press on. Well, you can see it's light now. If I pan behind me, you may just see the sun about to rise over there. I'm just going to join this main road here, drop down a steep hill, then do a few miles on the A38. It's got a cycle lane attached to it. It's just going down here. I'm going to be in heavy traffic, so precautionary. I've got these overshoes with lots of Scotch-Lite on, and I have these reversible ankle bands. Now it's light, I'm going to reverse those, so there's lots of motion. You probably notice I wear a lot of green, yellow and orange. It's no coincidence. I'll just put this picture in, let you figure out what I'm trying to say here. But if you look at a colour wheel, all I'll say is the colour exactly opposite at 180 degrees to each colour creates the strongest contrast. It forms a boundary. Have a look at that colour wheel and you'll see why I wear green, yellow and orange most of the time, especially in poor visibility. Yeah, rush hour traffic, you can see it all building up here. I'm going to join this for a couple of miles. Anyway, short stop and I'll be on my way. I'm now in Subway in Gloucester, just having a 12-inch bacon and cheese, hot coffee. I've got some fizzy orange for later on, have with my sandwiches. It's definitely a day for some hot food. I like it here actually because it's really quick. You're guaranteed not to get food poisoning, and yeah, I quite like bacon and cheese on a toasted bap on a winter's day. So I'll spend about 15-20 minutes here just charging devices. As you can see, it's a lovely blue sky out there, so I'm hoping to make a lot of progress in the next few hours. It was quite slow first thing. Once I got on the A38 it felt much safer. There's part of my carriageway is almost all designated cycle lanes, so I would say make some really good progress up there, claw back some of that time I lost on the bike track. I'm going to carry on trying to do that until I get to the halfway point up to Mon7, and then I'll come turn round and then start heading back down the other side of Gloucester, and then it starts getting a little bit lumpy this afternoon, and I think the wind's going to be against me, so the trick is not to overdo it on the way up here, even though it feels nice and easy. Just hold a little bit back, because I know from experience it can get quite tricky this afternoon. Anyway, first of my stops today, wolf that down. I'll be gone in about 15 minutes. Now coming into Maysmore. This is just a few miles north of Gloucester. The great thing about coming through Gloucester on a bike is either cycle path or cycle lane. You pretty much ride through traffic free. This is the bit I was a bit concerned about. There is a cycle path just beyond this road, but it quite often gets flooded. You can see how high the river is. Sometimes it spills up onto this road, and I know last night I was looking at the Environment Agency website and they were warning of floods up near Quedgley and on this road, so it's nice to get through here. I'm not saying we won't have any floods as we go up towards Upton-on-7 and also Tewkesbury on the way back down. They're both prone to flooding, so fingers crossed. I've got a mental map of the route, so if I have to, I'll deviate and then just explain to the DIY organiser that I just couldn't get through and I had to deviate. As long as I'm over distance, not under distance, and as long as I'm clearly not taking the mickey, most DIY organisers are fairly flexible if you explain. Just stopped here at the boundary sign for Worcestershire, and behind me, you won't see it actually because of the hedgerows, I can see the Malverns, that very distinctive ridge of hills. We spent our honeymoon up there for a fortnight, me and Linda, got very fond memories. But you can see the peaks have just got a dusting of snow up there, so it's clearly had some severe weather up here overnight. I've just turned off the A417 north of Gloucester, and I'm heading on this road into Upton-on-7. Just a little bit of rain coming down, sleety rain actually. That rain this morning worked in my favour, because when I looked out the window, my back road, the cars didn't have frost on them. When I looked out the front window, different street, just literally round the corner, they were all frosted over and my heart sunk a little bit. And then when the rain came, it just washed it all off. So it worked in my favour. So about 9 miles to go to Upton-on-7. Unless I'm really hungry there, I won't stop because I'm quite keen to get this loop done. and start heading back down south. I've got a mental picture about where all the railway stations are. I mean, I'm not aiming on opting out, but this is a good winter route because I'm never more than about 7 or 8 miles from a railway station. So, you know, worst comes to worst, I can just call a taxi up and get a lift to the nearest railway station. So I've got all those in mind, but I'm sort of entering this little dead spot just north of Tewkesbury actually. Once I turn north up to 117, in next to no time it seems like you're back down at Tewkesbury, and there's Tewkesbury and Ashworth station there. Then as you head round the outskirts of Gloucester, you got it there, Cam and Dursley, you get the idea. Then as I head down towards the bike track, there's always Yate, worst comes to worst. As I said, there's all these railway stations dotted round, worst comes to worst. The flooding wasn't as bad as I expected coming through Gloucester. You can see the River Severn was very, very high, but it hadn't spilled out on the roads, or if it has, it's subsided. The next pinch point will be at Tewkesbury probably. It's where the Avon and the Severn merge, and that's quite often a floodplain there. I'll try and film that as I ride by. We're now heading south. After leaving Upton upon Severn, you do that sharp turn. We're heading south now, and before you know it, you're coming into Tewkesbury. This is always a place of awe after heavy rainfall. It's where the Avon and the River Severn merge. Look how flooded it is, and this is only one river. There's another one just the other side of here, which is why Tewkesbury is so prone to flooding. Look at it, it's like being on a pontoon around here. Reminds me of being in the bayou in America, in the southern states. I think it's fair to say I'm a bit lacking in energy today, even though I've had plenty to eat, had a good night's sleep last night, feel well prepared. I just think the cold is just sapping me. Something I always revert to, I came across this almost by accident when I was at grown-up school. Even if I'm struggling physically, I know that my brain is consuming about 20% of my metabolic energy. And you've got much more control over that than you may think you have actually, and it's easy to turn a few switches, metaphorically speaking. So even though I'm physically feeling quite weak, mentally feeling quite strong. Whether I still feel like that later on remains to be seen. You can see I've taken the high vis off, I've gone into this orange windproof gilet. I just find the high vis almost feels like a safety blanket at dusk. It gives me that extra layer of warmth, and it just gives me a psychological extra layer of feeling protected actually with all the Scotch light. Somebody passed me this morning wearing similar to me. They had Scotch light on their ankles, on their overshoes, and they had tons of Scotch light on a high vis, and they just lit up like a beacon. And I was thinking, good, I hope that's what I look like from behind. Anyway, sight to behold. I just go along to the next river. It's literally just over that little rise there, and you'll see there's another river like this coming down there. I would just pavement it along here actually. Look at that. That's literally just beyond the main street of Tewkesbury. Railway bridge over there, and here's the other river. Gosh, it really does feel like being on a pontoon here. And here's the second river. Looks like an inland sea, isn't it? I can't remember which is which. It's the Severn and the Avon, but they merge round about here, and this is what you get. I've cycled down the A38 a few miles south of Tewkesbury. There's actually a cycle lane painted onto the road, so it feels very, very safe, even though there's a lot of traffic. Most of the main traffic is actually on the motorway just over that way. So without pointing the camera in the sun, I'm about to turn left there, start skirting all around the outskirts of Gloucester. Then before I know what's what, we'll be heading down towards Stonehouse and then climbing up Foster Hill, the really big hill up on the Cotswolds, about 880, 890 feet up there for a few miles. We'll drop down into Whitton Under Edge. I'm hoping to do that while it's still light. I don't particularly want to go down there in the dark. So I'm going to have my sandwiches here, quick stop, just charging the Garmin's, when I've switched them back on, I'm going to check my phone, do some calculations and try and work out how I'm doing. I've explained it on videos before, but if you're a new subscriber, there's a method I use. I just find managing my time management is so much more effective than trying to ride blindly and just ride fast. I'll show you how I do it, but first of all I'm going to have a snack. For those unfamiliar with Audax, it's a timed event over a set course, and you've got a minimum and a maximum speed that you can go at, which actually gives you minimum and maximum time allowances. So for this event, it's slightly over 200 kilometers, about 204 I think. The time allowance, maximum time allowance, is 14 hours and 15 minutes. 1-5. I left home at 6 AM this morning, so that gives me till 8:15 tonight, 8 to 15 PM. I can do some calculations now. My Garmin Edge 200 is telling me it's about 4 hours 37 minutes. Let's say 4.5 hours to keep the maths simple. And I know it's coming up to 1:30 PM. So some simple maths based on that calculation. It's not 100% accurate, but it's a gauge. 4.5 hours from now will be 1:30. What's that? 5:30. 6 o'clock. So you can see I've got 2 hours 15 minutes in hand. Not a massive amount, but I've got a time buffer. If I slow down or really, encounter problems after dark, I know I've got that 2 hours 15 minutes buffered. I can't be complacent, but at least now, with only 55 miles to go, I'm well over halfway, I've got 2 hours in hand. So that just gives me the peace of mind that I've got a time buffer to play around with. So I just find that mentally is so much easier than just trying to go fast or guess how I'm doing, I now know just through that simple calculation. Just snaking my way through the outskirts of Gloucester now without actually going into the centre. And I'm just coming past this place. They make the landing carriage for Airbus. Look at that, it's a fairly neat bit of kit, isn't it? That must be, what, 15-20 feet high behind this fence. Oh, and it must be uplit at night. That must look really amazing at night time. Just gives you an idea what's up inside the wing. I know there's hundreds of tons of aviation fuel, but you've also got a bunch of those as well. Wow, that's pretty impressive, isn't it? With about 33 miles to go, we're just coming up to Foster Hill. That's it going up there. The thing to remember about this is it's a long old slog, and the lead up to it here feels really hard. It feels like you're putting a lot of effort in for very little reward. And then you do have to get out the saddle for the first hairpin or so. Then once you get to a gate on the right hand side with really good views looking back across the Severn Estuary, it just gets so much easier after that. You can just sit in the saddle and ride the rest of it just sitting down in the saddle. So that's the thing to remember. The first bit is really hard, unforgiving, then it gets easier. I was hoping to get out there in the light and then hopefully get across the top a few miles, because that can be busy, you'll see, and then drop down to Wootton Under Edge. Be nice to do that in the light. I've already been passed by a grit here, so I'm hoping it's not going to freeze much before I get home, but it would be good to get off here before it's dark. And then after Wootton Under Edge, it's a fairly quick run back into Bath actually. Anyway, next stop, Foster Hill. Oh, and by the way, just to the left of it up there, Nymphsfield, that's where the Roman road came down. It either came straight down or terraced zigzag. Okay, I'm in Chip and Sodbury, which is a big market town on the outskirts of Bristol. I'm going to get on some minor roads just up there and then climb up on some high ground before I drop down onto the Bath to Bristol bike track. But it's just rung 6 o'clock, so I've kind of got a little bit of pressure on me. The Garmin's estimating 1 hour 20 minutes, so my 2 hours has evaporated down to 40 minutes. It's a bit of a slog out of here for a couple of miles, and then it's quite a fast ride down towards Pucklechurch and on the bike track. I'm still fairly confident, but I can't afford to mess about too much. I'll probably finish the video here and then talk to you when I get back at home. I just don't think I'm going to have another chance to stop. Well, it's now Wednesday morning. So what happened last night? When I got to Chipping Sodbury, I suddenly realised that 2-hour buffer that I had in hand earlier on had shrunk to 40 minutes, and that was a little bit stressful. So I decided I would just ride and not film anymore after that. And I don't know whether it's the food I had or possibly the stressful situation, but I just somehow found this energy from somewhere. Maybe it's a change of direction, wind condition, I don't know, but I seem to make really, really good time. And I didn't stop to check my watch, anything like that. I just got on with riding, and I was checking the Garmin and it was counting down as I approached, and I decided as I got to within about half a mile of my house, I would then look at the phone and get a time. The afternoon was actually quite stressful because, first of all, my high vis for riding after dark with lots of silver Scotch-Light reflective material on the back of the high vis had somehow fallen out the back of the saddlebags, so that kind of concerned me. I feel much safer in that. It feels like a blanket of comfort, really, so I was quite disappointed that I'd lost that, and I felt very, very vulnerable, especially at rush hour. I had to ride in a little bit of commuter traffic for a few miles. That didn't help. And then as I came off the Cotswold Escarpment to drop down into Wootton Under Edge, there's all these road closure signs and diversions, and I always carry on. I just chance it. I always figure even if you have to get up and walk, a bike or somebody on foot will get through. But this time it was actually gated and you couldn't get through. And so I knew right next to it there's a lane actually that would take me down into Wootton Under Edge, but that was a really steep drop, clearly on roads that hadn't been treated, and I was doing it in the dark. So I was taking that a little bit gingerly. A few cars came down there, obviously locals who knew the shortcut, but I didn't get the camera out, as I said, because of the time issue. And as I came in towards Wootton Under Edge, there was this big gap in the trees, and you suddenly realise you're on the edge of a cliff dropping down into this built up area, and all the lights were sparkling. That was just absolutely wonderful. Probably the camera wouldn't have picked it up anyway, but that was pretty amazing. And then I got back on course in Wootton Under Edge, and then I ploughed on down to Chipping Sodbury, and that's when I suddenly realised, gosh, I've lost a lot of my time allowance. And also what had started to happen was my Garmin was giving me low battery alarms, and what I sometimes do is I use the cable to actually charge it on the go, because it's a specially wired cable. I think it's called OTG on the go. You can actually charge it and use it at the same time. And I kept getting all these signals sort of saying it was connecting, it wasn't connecting, and the battery was getting really low. So hence why I take 2 Garmins on important rides. I've just got a backup. As it turned out, it didn't run out of power, but I thought it may have done. And I really got a move on. I made really good progress, and my headlights were starting to show the roads were starting to ice and frost up, and you could see all the sparkling on the roads. And I just ploughed on with the thought of I need to sort of get this event finished, really. And the final section from Pucklechurch down towards the cycle track, I can't remember, Coxgrove Hill it's called, that's a minor road, and I'd seen at the top of it the water was running downhill, and I thought it won't have frozen because it's running downhill. Then all of a sudden all these lights came towards me, and it was a group of cyclists. In fact, it was several groups of cyclists that had made their way up, and each group very, very kindly warned me, be careful mate, on the way down, it's really treacherous, it's icy. So if it hadn't been for those, I could well have, well, I don't know, but if it hadn't been for those groups of cyclists that warned me, I would have probably just carried on down there, and who knows what may have happened. So on the steepest section I actually got off and walked only about 100 yards, and I did put the brakes on at one point just to sort of see if it would lock the wheels, and actually the wheel moved, so clearly I was walking and pushing it on ice. Then I got back on the bike track, headed into Bath, and about half a mile from home I just quickly checked my time, and it was about 20 to 8 then, so I was really cutting it quite fine, actually quite stressful. I said before, January is quite often considered to be the hardest months riding this randonneur around the year, and it certainly was the case yesterday actually. But you know, I got round. That's 9 consecutive months, 3/4 of the year done, towards my 17th randonneur around the year. I've just submitted the route in. I sent some photographs to the organisers just explaining why I detoured. It wasn't a shortcut, in fact it was a long cut. It added distance on. They're fairly flexible if you explain the reason why, and you clearly aren't taking the mickey. They're fairly accommodating. So that was it. That was quite a hard day actually, physically and mentally. That I was so fortunate to have that late burst of energy. I just don't know where it came from, and I was really fortunate to see those cyclists just exactly where it mattered. So I'm so grateful for them. If any of you are watching this, thank you so much. I really do appreciate all those ice warnings. I've got a calendar event I'm riding at the end of the month. That's the Jack and Grace 100 from Bristol. It's one of my favourite local events, so I'm down to ride that. The next video will probably be an equipment update on my giant Tough Road SLR 2 bike. I've modified it since I've got it, and I've been and ahhing whether to do this final modification, and I've decided to go for it. So hopefully that's arriving today, so I'll probably film me installing that and explain this final modification. Anyway, if you got this far, thanks so much for watching. See you soon. Bye for now.